Ellen DeGeneres froze mid-sentence, watching the 12-year-old girl sitting across from her struggle to find the right English words. The studio lights seemed too bright, the cheerful blue chairs too vibrant for the weight of what Amara Hassan was trying to say. But what happened in the next 60 seconds would become more than television. It would become a bridge between two worlds, built by compassion and witnessed by millions. Nobody in that Warner Bros. Studio knew they were about to witness something that would change international policy. Not the cameras rolling, not the producers adjusting their headsets, and certainly not Amara Hassan, who thought she was just there to practice her English on a show her foster mother watched every day. But Ellen knew. Ellen had been planning this moment for 5 weeks, ever since a letter from a Seattle elementary school teacher had made her call someone she'd never expected to reach out to personally. The letter was written in careful handwriting. Dear Ellen, I have a student who survived things no child should survive. She draws pictures of her family every day, family members she may never see again. She asks me if America is really the place where dreams come true. I don't know what to tell her anymore. Her name is Amara, and she believes in kindness because that's all she has left to believe in. But this is where the story gets extraordinary, because Ellen didn't just read that letter. She researched Amara's case, contacted refugee advocacy groups, and discovered something that made her place a call to one person she knew would understand the weight of this moment: Angelina Jolie, UN Goodwill Ambassador, and someone who had dedicated her life to refugee causes. Now, as Amara sat in that familiar blue chair, wearing a dress from Goodwill that was slightly too big for her small frame, she had no idea that her story had already traveled to the highest levels of international humanitarian work. Ellen leaned forward, her characteristic energy subdued, replaced by something gentler, more careful. Amara, you've been learning English for 2 years now. That's incredible. Tell me about your favorite word. Amara's dark eyes lit up despite the nervousness. When she smiled, the gap from her missing front tooth made her look even younger than 12. My favorite word is tomorrow, she said, her accent heavy but her pronunciation careful. Because tomorrow is always, how do you say, possibility. Ellen felt something break open in her chest. Here was a child who had lost everything, sitting in a television studio, talking about possibility. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Why is tomorrow your favorite word? Amara looked down at her hands, then back up at Ellen. In my country, before the war, my mama always say, tomorrow we will go to market. Tomorrow we will visit grandmother. Tomorrow we will— Her voice caught slightly. But then tomorrow became scary. Tomorrow meant more bombs, more running, more goodbye. The studio audience had gone completely quiet. This wasn't the uplifting energy Ellen's show was known for, but it was something more important. It was truth. But now, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger, tomorrow means school. Tomorrow means learning new words. Tomorrow means maybe I can help other children like me. Ellen studied Amara's face. In 20 years of hosting, she had never interviewed someone who carried such mature wisdom in such young eyes. Amara, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be like you, Amara said simply. I want to make people smile when they are sad. But also, I want to be doctor. In my country, doctors saved my little brother when he was hurt. I want to save children too. Ellen felt tears starting to form. What happened to your family, sweetheart? You don't have to talk about anything that makes you uncomfortable. Amara took a deep breath, the kind of breath that comes before difficult truths. My papa and mama, they had to stay behind to look for my little brother when the bombs came. They put me on a truck with my aunt. They said they would find us later. Her voice became quieter. That was 3 years ago. I live with very nice family now, but every night I look at the moon and hope my family sees the same moon somewhere. The silence in the studio was profound. Camera operators were wiping their eyes. Audience members were holding each other. Ellen felt her professional composure cracking, but she also felt something else, a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. But Ellen wasn't just listening as a talk show host anymore. She was listening as someone who was about to facilitate a conversation between this brave child and one of the world's most powerful advocates for refugees. Because sitting backstage, watching this interview on a monitor, was Angelina Jolie. Amara, Ellen said, standing up from her chair. There's someone here who's been listening to our conversation, someone who has spent her life working with children exactly like you, helping them find their families and build new lives. Amara looked confused, a flicker of hope crossing her face. Someone who helps find families. Ellen walked toward the wings of the stage, and the studio audience began to murmur with anticipation. But this time, The energy was different, more reverent, more aware that something important was happening. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ellen announced, "please welcome someone whose work with refugees has touched millions of lives, Angelina Jolie." The audience erupted, but it was a different kind of applause. This wasn't celebrity excitement. This was recognition of someone who used her platform for profound good. Ellen was watching Amara, whose eyes had gone wide with something between disbelief and recognition. Angelina Jolie walked onto that stage, carrying herself with the grace of someone who had sat with refugees in camps across the world, who had held children who had lost everything, who understood that fame was only valuable if it could be transformed into hope. She was wearing a simple black blazer, no elaborate styling, no performance energy, just presence. "Hello, beautiful," Angelina said, walking directly to Amara and kneeling beside her chair. "I heard you're very brave." Amara stared at her, then whispered, "You are Angelina Jolie. You help children like me." "I try to," Angelina said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much suffering but refused to look away. "And right now, I want to help you." But this is where the story becomes something nobody expected, something that would change not just Amara's life, but how America thought about refugee children, about second chances, about the responsibility that comes with safety and privilege. Angelina looked into Amara's eyes with the intensity of someone who had made promises to children before, and kept them. "Amara, Ellen told me about your dream to become a doctor. She also told me about your family." Amara's breath caught. "You know about my family? I know that you've been incredibly brave. I know that you've been taking care of yourself, and learning and growing, even though your heart is broken. And I know that missing your family doesn't mean you can't build a beautiful life here while we work to find them." Angelina reached into her jacket and pulled out a folder. "I've been working with international agencies since Ellen called me. We've located refugee camps where your family was last registered. It's going to take time and I can't promise anything, but we're going to try to find them." Amara began crying, not the quiet tears she'd been holding back, but the kind of sobs that come when hope thought lost suddenly reappears. Angelina immediately wrapped her arms around this child, and Ellen felt something crack open in her own chest watching this global humanitarian hold a little girl who had carried the weight of the world alone. "But that's not all," Angelina continued, still holding Amara. "Your education is the most important thing right now. You want to be a doctor? Then you're going to be a doctor." Angelina looked at Ellen, who nodded, then back at Amara. "I'm establishing a scholarship fund today. Not just for you, but for refugee children across the country who have the same dreams you do. Full education from elementary school through medical school if that's what you choose. Because children like you don't just survive, you become the leaders the world needs." The studio audience was on their feet, but this wasn't applause for entertainment. This was witness to something sacred, something that transcended celebrity and touched the core of human dignity. But Angelina wasn't finished. She looked directly into the camera, not as an actress but as a UN Goodwill Ambassador who had spent decades advocating for the voiceless. To everyone watching this, Amara represents millions of children who didn't choose to leave their homes. They didn't choose war. They didn't choose separation from their families. But they did choose to keep hoping, to keep learning, to keep believing in tomorrow. And if we're truly the country we say we are, then we choose to see their potential, not their circumstances. Ellen stepped forward, her own face streaked with tears. "You know what, folks? This is exactly why we do this show. Not for the laughs, though we love those, but for moments like this. Moments when we remember that kindness isn't just nice, it's necessary." She turned to Amara, who was still holding on to Angelina like a lifeline. "Amara, you said you wanted to be like me, to make people smile when they're sad. But sweetheart, you just did something more important. You reminded all of us what courage looks like." The show ended with Amara, Ellen, and Angelina in a three-way embrace, but the image that would be shared millions of times was simpler. Angelina kneeling beside Amara, both of them crying, both of them understanding that sometimes the most important conversations happen not between celebrities, but between one human being and another. 3 months later, Amara received news that changed everything. Angelina's team had located her family in a refugee camp in Jordan. They were alive. Her little brother had grown 3 inches. Her parents had never stopped looking for her. The reunion, facilitated by international humanitarian organizations, happened 6 months after the Ellen Show appearance. But Amara didn't leave America. Her family, understanding the opportunities she had here, made the impossible decision that love sometimes requires. They moved to Seattle to be with her, supported by the same scholarship fund that was now helping hundreds of refugee children. Amara is now 15, fluent in English, and enrolled in advanced biology classes. She volunteers at the Refugee Resettlement Agency that helped her family reunite, translating for newly arrived children and showing them that tomorrow really is possibility. The scholarship fund Angelina established that day has grown into a comprehensive program serving over 2,000 refugee children across America. But more importantly, it changed the conversation about refugee resettlement, showing the country not the burden of displacement, but the gift of resilience. Ellen keeps a drawing on her dressing room wall, one of Amara's pictures from that first meeting, showing her family holding hands under the same moon she used to look at every night. Next to it is a photo from Amara's family reunion, all of them together again, smiling at the camera. The caption in Amara's handwriting, "Tomorrow came true." Angelina continues her work with refugees worldwide, but she says that meeting Amara reminded her why she started. Every policy, every program, every initiative, it all comes down to one child who deserves the chance to become who they're meant to be. And Amara, she still believes in tomorrow. But now she knows that tomorrow isn't just something that happens to you, it's something you create. One kind act, one brave choice, one moment of compassion at a time. Because that's what Ellen, Angelina, and Amara taught the world that day. That the most powerful force on earth isn't war or politics or borders. It's the simple recognition that every child deserves to dream, to learn, to become. And sometimes, all it takes is someone willing to see their light and help them shine. The moon that Amara used to look at alone is the same moon she looks at now with her family, in their small apartment in Seattle, as she studies for her biology exam. But now when she looks up, she doesn't just hope, she plans. Tomorrow, after all, is possibility. And possibility, it turns out, is just another word for love in action. Share this story if you believe every child deserves a chance to dream. Comment below if you've ever helped someone find their tomorrow. And remember, kindness isn't just something we give. It's something we become, one brave moment at a time. Because in the end, that's what happened in that studio that day. 3 women, a talk show host, a humanitarian, and a refugee child, reminded the world that the most important bridges aren't built across rivers or canyons. They're built across the spaces between human hearts, connecting hope to possibility, dream to reality, today to a better tomorrow.